We will call the March 14th meeting of the Macon County Board of Commissioners to order. I'd like to welcome all of y'all in attendance. Happy to see y'all here on a nice, humid, hot, sunny day. I would like to mention that Commissioner Higdon is in Arizona tonight on a business trip and will not be with us. With that, we'll get started. Announcements on the agenda. We had a presentation from Commissioner Higdon. Since he's not here, we'll pass for that. But I do think we have a NCACC update video. We'll get that rolling.
Hello and welcome to the County Update video for March 2017. This video is produced by the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners each month to keep county officials informed about association activities. Let's begin this month with an update on federal legislative goals. The NCACC Board of Directors met in February, and at that meeting the board approved a slate of federal legislative goals after considering proposals from counties across the state. You can view the slate of approved goals at www.ncacc.org/federal issues. A number of North Carolina county officials attended the NACO Legislative Conference in February in support of these goals. At that conference, many members of the federal contingent to the United States Congress attended a congressional breakfast that is sponsored by the NCACC each year. There are a number of training opportunities for commissioners of all experience levels coming up over the next few months. One upcoming event, Working Together, County Funding for Local Schools, is April 5th, 7th, and 12th in various locations. There is a Stepping Up webinar on conducting timely mental health screening and assessment in jails. Also, don't forget about district meetings coming up in April and County Assembly Day in May. Please visit our website, www.ncacc.org, and click on the NCACC Calendar of Events graphic on the bottom of the page. There you can see the entire list of upcoming events. The 2017 legislative session is well underway, and your advocates are moving full speed ahead working towards accomplishing county's goals in this biennium. There are several ways to keep up to date with the latest information on legislation affecting counties. We have our legislative briefs sent out each week via email during session. We also invite you to watch our Made for Government television program this week at the General Assembly to stay up to date on legislation of concern to county governments. You can find both at our website, www.ncacc.org. For specific questions, please contact us by emailing communications@ncacc.org. There are many ways commissioners can become involved with the association, and one of the best ways is to become involved with steering committees. Each of the NCACC's 7 steering committees meets quarterly. Membership on the steering committees is open to all county commissioners as well as county staff who might have a particular interest or expertise. For more on NCACC steering committees, please visit ncacc.org/steering committees. The NCACC risk management pools continue to serve pool members with a solution and protection-oriented approach. Here is a short clip from an interview with Risk Pools Board of Trustees member and Scotland County Manager Kevin Patterson.
The best thing for being on the board is I get to learn a lot more about insurance, as well as also learning about what the risks that are going on across the state and on a larger issue, so that we can go ahead, so I can come in and actually start looking for items, looking for ways of planning for future risks that the county may have. As county manager, one of my primary duties is to plan for future risks and how to avoid them. Being on the trustees, board of trustees gives me additional knowledge that I can plan for contingencies that have not arisen yet.
Well, that wraps it up for this month. Thank you for watching and allowing us to keep you updated on your association's activities. If you'd like more information on anything we discussed here, please visit www.ncacc.org or contact us directly. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
All right, any further announcements?
We'll do that as a moment of silence and further announcements on anything else besides memories.
We would like to announce that March 29th is a Vietnam Veterans Day. That's celebrated nationwide. It'll be celebrated here in Macon County on April 1st with a parade beginning around 10 or 10:30, ending at the gazebo in Franklin. Of course, our own Vietnam veteran, Mr. Shields, will certainly be taking a part in that, and some of us others will be taking a part in that. So,
We repeat that date, please.
April 1st, that's Saturday, April 1st. And so, we would certainly like to have you come out and support our Vietnam veterans, and as we have a large contingent of those in Macon County. And the next announcement will be in Burke County for our district in an opiate epidemic forum. The first meeting, we're having them all over the state. The next will be in Burke County. That will be in March. That will be April 7th. And then we have the state wrap up on May the 9th, which is our meeting night, by the way. And I'll be involved in that. So we're having them statewide. I'll be somewhere once a week from now to then, so, and we'll keep you posted on where those are.
Anything else? All right.
We'll all rise for a moment of silence, and I'll ask Commissioner Gillespie to lead us.
And before we pray, there's several announcements of deaths and sad things we need to talk about just a little bit. This week we lost some very special people in our community, in our region. Pat Breedlove, mother of Mike and Joe Breedlove, passed away. Mike and Joe are both long-time county employees. And also a fellow county commissioner from Swain County, David Monteith, who I've certainly had the pleasure of working with David for many, many years. David had just after 1 week, he passed away. His funeral was today. We found out yesterday a long-time provider for mental health and substance abuse in Macon County died unexpectedly yesterday. Now, if Robbie can pronounce his last name, I've only known him as Francis T. for 15 years.
That's it.
So, but if you don't know who I'm talking about, Francis T. was the white-haired guy with a ponytail that worked with Mike Knighting for years and years. Realty, he and Robbie and some of us others started the jail program many, many years ago. Francis T., to my knowledge, never missed a mental health task force meeting. Was at our last one. Right, Tammy? Was always there. Was still working hard. The reason I went to check on him, he had missed a meeting yesterday morning. So Francis T. will be missed, and the hundreds, if not thousands, of people he has helped, Maconians, and Francis T. helped over the years. It's people like that they don't come around very often. Never asked for a penny that I knew of. And so need to remember these folks as we have a moment of silence. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no public hearings tonight. Looks like we do have several signed up for public comment. One of the items, Jerry, I think I've got you under reports and presentations, so I'm going to probably, if that's okay, remove you off of reports and presentations and just go ahead and put you under public comments, since there seems to be a lot of people that are speaking behind you. So with that, Jerry, is it Anselmo?
Yes, sir.
And you can come right on up to the front.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm here to talk about our litter problem in our county. And I have the Great Smoky Mountain Fish Camp, the canoe rental out on 28. And we clean up the river 2 times a year. And I clean up out on 28 and things. And we have lots and lots of volunteers that work very hard in our county And we had over 100 volunteers that cleaned up from here to Highlands the other day. It's already a disaster. And we had 4 guys yesterday in a pickup truck that was just loaded to the rim that came down 28 and cleaned it up. Right after they cleaned it up, you can drive down now, there's boxes and cans already out. And what we're asking for is for your help in trying to figure out a long-term solution to our litter problem. We live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, and the drive from here to Highlands is as good as it gets anywhere. And it's just absolutely, in the ditches, horrendous every place. If you leave Walmart and come the back way down Depot Street, it looks like a garbage dump. But if y'all can help us in any way, we would certainly appreciate it. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. John Rim?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. None of you folks know me, except you, Jim Tate, who've been up to my place one time and gave me some good advice on landscaping. The reason you don't know me, I live in Houston, Texas. I travel over 900 miles 6 or 7 times a year to be in this particular place because I love the streams and the rivers and the mountains and the forests. And Jerry and I know each other, and he has told me about his efforts to try to improve the visibility of the streams and the rivers, the mountains and the forests. And I come here because of that, and I think that many people come here because of that. I was reading this article about Highlands. Highlands has declared war on trash. They're recruiting ambassadors to go out and do this. And in the article that I read, it talked about the advertisement from the 1960s. And that advertisement showed an American Indian standing on the side of a highway, looking at litter, and there's a tear that came down his cheek. And it struck me that here we are at the Trail of Tears, and we still got trash. It's not going to go away unless, in my estimation, we do 3 things. One, I think we need to educate children and adults about the impact of trash. This whole area of the state depends on tourism, and we really need to do everything we can to get people like me to travel 900 miles to come see it. The second thing it seems to me that we need to do is enforce the laws. I don't know all of the laws here, but I expect that there are plenty of anti-littering laws that would be enforced that could do some good. And the third thing was maybe join up with Highlands. Seems like they're on to something, that they're recruiting people to come to work, and people like in Zelma. So, from someone who is, I was born in North Carolina. I went to Texas after I finished law school, and I've been there ever since, and it's been a wonderful place. Houston has been traumatic in my life, but there's no place that's finer than being in North Carolina. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Maggie McCray, I'm sorry, I can't read this in this order.
It's Azure.
Azure. A-Z-U-R-E?
Correct. My name is Maggie McCray. This is my granddaughter, Azure. And she, I think we are all, I told her, we're the old farts. But this is our coming generation. This is the one that we need to keep this county and our land free from litter, and it's because of them. So she's going to tell you about a little project that she was a part of after school.
We had our teacher wanted us to make plays. And so so I was part of a play called Trash, It's Got to Go Somewhere. And it's about these 2 children who learn the importance of picking up trash and recycling things. And I think it was cleaner around Bryson City, where my school is, and I think it made a big difference.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there's a thing that says out of the mouth of babes, and we can learn a lot. I'm also representing Jim and Olga Pater, and some of you know them. They've cleaned up their area by the airport for 15 years. And Jim came by today, and he said he was just too tired. The dude's 88, and his wife is also part of the trail club here, Dan Hill Trail Club. And he said he's given up. He feels there's nothing being done. He's written letters, he's made comments, and he believes there should be either a tax on bottles and cans, or B, that there should be a money back. And I remember as a little kid with my grandparents and going and finding bottles and cans and taking them to get money back. So those are the two suggestions he had. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next we have Mr. Gus Wildy.
How slim I am.
Thank you for your time. Just to kind of echo some of the things that have been said, it is distressing to see, the litter in such a beautiful area. And I'm just kind of curious, it just seems like worse here, maybe not really, maybe just because I'm here all the time, but I'm just kind of wondering how other places do to keep the roadsides from looking. And I don't really, like I said, maybe they all look like this, but when I drive other places, it just doesn't seem like it's so bad. So I don't know if other counties have other systems to do this. I think a lot of it is kind of unintentional, blowing out the back of trucks. Obviously, fast food stuff I think is more intentional. And I'm also kind of curious about the adopt a road areas. I mean, I see a lot of signs up, but I also see a lot of stuff on the side of the road, and I didn't know, I mean, are those still, once you get that sign, I mean, is that like a forever thing, or?
You have to do it, you have to participate in 2 cleanups per year. The state will actually give you bags.
That's what it is, 2 a year? Okay, I was kind of curious how often that
Turn
happened.
that back in.
And another thing, Gus, the fact is the DOT has cut back in the last 4 years on trash pickup on roads. Our contract for Macon County was just 2 pickups. Well, they've been before us too. But if you notice, Jerry called me, we called them. The next day they picked up again from the foot of the mountain to the foot of KA Mountain. The next day they had a crew, their own crew, the local crew picking up. And unfortunately, like Jerry also said, in 2 days. So I don't know, but the reason that, and I don't know why there's more trash than ever, but the DOT did even, they don't even pick up secondary roads. It's just the main entrances and exits out of town, the 4-lane. I don't think you can pick up old 64 anymore. So it's, and without that, the Adopt a Highway program, and it's really not been pushed in several years that I know of. And Mr. Manager, unless you've heard something, we did mention to the previous secretary.
I mean, that seems like a good idea to me. I mean, getting a lot of people involved for a relatively small section, that they feel is theirs. And, I mean, I just like the idea of it. Maybe the reality isn't quite as good. But anyhow, so just want to say thank you for all your efforts in trying to clean it up.
And Robbie can certainly, while Robbie's here, I think he can speak to the law enforcement aspect of it, which we've spoken to Raleigh about that. And the thing is, unless Robbie or some of his deputies, and Sheriff, you speak to that, unless you physically see him pull it out the window, you can speak to that. I think these folks like to go.
I think what's important, he mentioned 3 things, that gentleman there, and I can tell you he doesn't have to worry about one of those things, and that's called enforcement. We do enforce that law. The problem is there's a catch-22 to that. If you see somebody littering and they throw out litter, you report that, you're then a witness. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, 9 out of 10 people don't want to take the time to have to come to court. The officer didn't see that offense, so therefore you have to testify in court that they threw that out. And if you've ever been involved with the log jam of the court system, missing several days of work and 5 different court appearances for a litter charge, you're probably going to give up. Therefore, the case is dismissed. Cases can be prosecuted. The other thing is these illegal dump sites. We used to with the inmates, and we've picked up several hundred thousands of pounds of trash on the roadway. And with these illegal dump sites, you have to prove that individual dumped that. Even if you go through the trash and you find Ronnie Beal's address, you have to prove that you actually threw that stuff out and have somebody have seen you throw that out. Otherwise, you can't prosecute. So basically, as many people say, the law is there to protect the criminal, they get away with that. So the most important thing that you can educate people is if you sincerely want to do something about litter and you see somebody do something, be willing, if you're going to take the time to call 911 and report it, just understand that you're going to have to be willing to go to court too, because we will write the ticket. Absolutely will and have. But I can't think of a case that has actually been prosecuted. It's usually dismissed because the people don't want to take the time to, don't want to be the bad guy, don't want this person to know that I'm the one telling on them, and afraid of retaliation.
That the attention don't hurt.
One more thing, because I had it happen to me. I was right there, and you'll be hearing about it tonight. Gentleman threw his trash. I was right there. Called the sheriff, and in essence, I was told that to prosecute, I would have to go down to the magistrate. So that's one more step.
Correct.
And so
Why
do it?
You have to testify and swear under oath that you saw that individual commit that crime. And a deputy can't swear it because he didn't see it.
Robbie, do you currently do inmate?
No, sir. Now, due to budget restraints and the manpower issue and the liability of having inmates out, we're not doing it right now. Haven't been doing it for a couple of years.
Can I ask to address that again? Because say if they are on community service, so the judge has given that sense, community service, why can that not be part of their community services, clean up the trash?
I think actually that is being done. That's not under us, of course.
Why wouldn't it be?
Because that goes, once they're convicted of a crime, then it goes under the probation office, and the judge sentenced in the community service. There's a whole different agency that's responsible for the community service. And there are people out picking up under community service. That does happen. That does happen.
But the DOT doesn't do it anymore, I know that for sure. But what I'm saying is could there not be a mandated community service?
There is.
Let me finish out.
Okay.
A mandated community service for trash pickup with combination of your department and probation department and the county commissioners. Could there not be some cooperation, if you will, and say that's their department or that's their department, they would work that y'all could work together?
I mean, I guess there could be, but the fact of the matter
You're
is,
laughing, I see you laughing.
well, we can't do everything. The fact of the matter is, if I'm out here watching this guy, making sure that he's responsible for picking up trash today, what about the other 5 people that are out here littering? You want me to get them too? So once we've charged them, once they've been convicted, it falls under an entirely different system. Let them be responsible for their job and making sure that their community service people who are assigned to picking up trash, pick up trash. It's then falls under another organization. Actually a state agency, not a county agency. Probation is a state agency.
Sheriff, what's the current fine?
I'm not really sure. It's usually court cost and about $500 fine.
Seems like there used to
Quite
be-
costly.
Seems like there used to be signs around it.
Thank you. Signs and fines.
Signs and fines and ticket books.
But I agree, part of getting in front of this is education and communication. Signs and company. Go ahead, Jim.
A couple years ago, well, a few years ago, Sharon and I were in Switzerland, and we were amazed at how clean the country was.
That's right.
And we asked, why is your country so clean? What's the secret? And they said it wasn't always like this. In the 1800s, every town just dumped its trash down the mountainside. Every house dumped its trash down the mountainside. And they started in the schools at the earliest grades, and they started educating the kids and getting them to work on their parents. And it is the most clean place you've ever seen in your life now. But it took years to get it done. It took national pride, really, to make it happen. When we were there, we saw an older man throw a cigarette butt on the street, and there were two little boys headed to school in their school uniforms, and one of them went over and told the man to pick it up. I mean, that's the way they do it. And it works there, but it would be a long process.
Thanks, Jim. Mr. Prince, are you addressing this issue or
Yes.
something else? Okay.
Not, it's a different issue.
Okay, before we bring you up, is there any further comment on that? Well, I think we'll keep that under advisement and be on our minds about how we might improve situations. I don't think there's a soul up here that's going to disagree with any comments that are necessarily made tonight. You definitely use some improvement. So, Mr. Prince, come on up. DOT easement?
Yes, sir. Here's something so you guys can see. I've got these for almost each and every one of you. They're pictures. We know the looks are up there. In essence, what I'm here for tonight is something that I feel would be a great safety improvement for this county. And it started out in December. I'm a car guy. And one of my neighbors, Nick, came by and said, Jeff, I'm sick and tired of seeing cars in your driveway. Do something or I'll do something about it. So, I want to be a good neighbor. I put up a small fence, a small privacy fence. It's 4 feet high, 4x4 posts on each end, and the fence itself is very thin, little over 1/4 inch slats. Immediately upon putting up the fence, a couple of things happened. First, Nick was real happy. Couldn't see my cars anymore. The big thing is the speeding stopped. And this is a very tight curve, embankments, and before, all hours of the day and night, because there's a lot of young teenagers and in their 20s, constant speeding, that totally stopped. Second is I received nothing but positive feedback. People would stop while I was building the fence, they stopped and said, Jeff, why are you doing this? And I explained to them, they said, got two reactions. First is, well, you shouldn't be doing this because you have your rights. But the second was, everybody loved the fence. The last was that I caught 3 criminals immediately. One gentleman, for at least 10 years, has been throwing his trash in my yard. And I've been picking it up. I knew who it was, but I never actually saw him do it. I was behind the fence, here he comes. Bam! Something hits my fence, I look over. Same trash he's been throwing for years. I got with the sheriff's department. They came out, explained everything. I said, please go down and talk to the guy and just tell him to stop with the trash. And he said, okay. They went down there, spoke with him. He admitted it. And then right after that evening, 2 guys in a car stopped around the corner. One guy stayed, the driver stayed in the car. And the other guy got out, the passenger, came over and was looking to see what he could steal in my yard. Because he was doing one of these things, came out from behind the fence. 4 days later, after the fence was up, the DOT showed up. They had a complaint. The complaint was from the father of the gentleman that I reported for throwing trash. Now, the gentleman who threw the trash, Orville Lewis, is about 40 years old. His father's in his close to his 70s. And this is just to tell you why it happened, is the father wanted the land I bought. As soon as I bought it, he came over, I want to buy your land, because he's buying up all the land in the valley. And I said, I don't want to sell it. After that, He has done everything he possibly could to affect me in some way or another. But I want to say the two gentlemen from DOT, they were absolutely excellent. Super nice, came out, first gentleman, Mr. Jones, listened to my story, and I asked for an encroachment agreement. And if you look on the first page, where it's yellow, this is the certified letter that he sent me, and he said, any items placed within the right-of-way hinder our ability to maintain the road and present a danger to passing motorists. You know, he explained to me that if a car hit your fence, it could damage the car. Then if you go to the pictures, the first one shows you, what the fence looks like. You can see my fence starts behind where my mailbox is, the mailbox post. Right behind that is a drop-off. Now, as you get into the middle of the curve, I've made sure because there's a telephone pole there, that there's enough area for any utility vehicle or Frontier or somebody to stop. If you look at the second picture, it's showing coming from the other way. And you can see, at the end of the fence, there's a little bit of a drop, it starts with a drop-off. Now, one thing, a number of years ago, a gentleman went straight. And basically, with the second picture, he went straight, went off. I could have been killed. I was working down there, but it was lunchtime. I went into town, came back. Ambulances, fire, sheriff was there. Guy in a Cherokee drove off, went into a tree just above where I was working, totaled his Jeep, and both of them were taken to the hospital. Now, if you go into the third picture, this gives you an idea of what the drop-off is. From the road down to where my property is flat is 25 feet. Any vehicle going over that, you've got a 25-foot drop-off, or on either side, you're going into trees. Now, with the question on where it says present danger to passing motorists, the picture clearly showed, and last night I had, I don't know if anybody knows Fawn, she drives for UPS. She saw me and stopped and said, I so love your fence. At night when I'm driving, your fence just clearly shows that there is a curve there. There's no way to miss the fact there isn't a major curve. So I really appreciate your fence being there. And I told her, I said, well, DOT wants me to either take it down or move it. Everybody else I've been telling that to, same thing. We love your fence. It definitely prevents anybody. And when DOT said, they might hit the fence and damage the vehicle, I said, you don't have to worry about damaging the vehicle with the fence. If you hit the fence, you're up the creek because you're going over the embankment. This fence prevents people from going over that embankment. There's no way they cannot see it. It slows people down, which makes this neighborhood that I live in much safer. The fourth picture is just another angle to show. Now when you get into the fifth picture, which is the mailboxes, when I was talking with the first gentleman from DOT, Mr. Jones, he said, every day I grant easements to utility companies. I've never, ever granted an easement agreement to a citizen. It's just unprecedented. We just have never done it, and we're never going to do it. If you look at the mailboxes, this is right down from where my fence is on the opposite side of the road. The first one you have is a metal mailbox, large metal post, 2 4x4 posts on the next one, which is like my fence is made out of. The third one is a telephone pole sitting in the ground. If you hit something like this, and this is what the post office is granted within the easement, if you hit this, you can do a lot more damage than if you hit my little fence. Because my little fence has 3 4x4 posts within a 16-foot area, and a flimsy little fence. I've also designed it so it can completely come down very quickly. 8 screws hold the fence to the post. The posts are just in the ground shallow, we pull it right out, which I explained to them, to DOT. Go to the next picture. This is just past the mailboxes. There's this huge telephone pole, electrical wires, transformer on top. It's exactly 3 feet off the side of the road. Which is going to do more damage? Hitting this telephone pole or hitting my fence? You've got a much better chance to hit this telephone pole and either totally destroy your car, be injured, and possibly dead. My thing is, it's sort of like do as we say, not as we do. Why do the utility companies and post office have a right to put all these dangerous things in the right of way? And I don't. And I would not have put my fence in the right of way if I could put it anywhere else, but when your land goes like this and goes like this, to move it back this far, I'd have to put up a 20-foot fence. So to make it short, Mr. Russell, who's the head man who makes the decision, he came out, I explained everything to him about how this makes it safe, and he was like, it really does. And he asked me to give him all my notes and pictures and stuff like that. But he also said, it's unprecedented that we've ever given it to a citizen. We give it to utilities all the time, but never to a citizen. About a week or so later, he called me back and said, Jeff, we just never given it to a citizen, we're not going to give it to you. So my thing is, when I'm here before the commissioners, is to say, this is a definite plus for my neighborhood, all the way around. I mean, it's already been proven. I also asked both gentlemen, what about putting up a guardrail then if I have to take down the fence? Mr. Jones, and again, very nice, I'm not saying it was like you could tell, don't hold your breath. They said for us to do it, we'd have to send somebody out, and he'd have to look it over and see if it's viable, and then we'd have to try and come up with funding to put a guardrail here. And I looked at him and said, so basically what you're saying is that it ain't going to happen. He said, you're right. Said the same thing to Mr. Russell, who's the man who makes the decision. I said, well, what about putting up a guardrail?
Mr. Fritz, I'm going to cut you short. We were trying to allow 5 minutes, to let you go about 15 now. But,
well, I've got only one more thing to say.
Okay, hurry.
In essence, what I'd like, if you sent something to them that said, Macon County Board of Commissioners, after viewing the pictures and listening to testimony concerning Mr. Pritz's fence, we've come to the conclusion this fence provides vast safety improvements for motorists and in preventing vehicles from driving over the 25-foot embankment, and would request that this encroachment agreement be granted for the fence to remain where it is. If this is not possible, then we request a guardrail be erected at your earliest possible convenience and that the fence remain in position until the guardrail is erected. You know the guardrail's never going to be erected. My fence will be able to stay there. And it won't be unprecedented because the commissioners have asked them to do something.
Right. I'm sympathetic, this person, I'm sympathetic to your situation, but I'm also, since I've been a commissioner, I don't know if I've ever got involved with this type of right-of-way issues, especially on the half line. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I'll be happy to bring for the TPC on the 27th. I'm on that board, and I'll request certainly request the guardrail. I mean, we've done that before, and it's been successful. I don't think we can get involved in the right-of-way issues, Mr. Council.
I think ultimately it's a decision that the state DOT makes. It's entirely within their province. We can give an opinion just like you can give an opinion, but it's ultimately their decision to determine what does and doesn't constitute a safety hazard. And they make that decision.
But isn't it logical to say it's totally safe to put a telephone pole 3 feet off the road?
I think there's different policy considerations that they.
Well, again, I'm just asking you, logically, is a telephone pole 3 feet off the side of the road, is that a safe situation?
Again, I think it's a matter that they have policy issues that they have to consider.
I'm not asking, I'm asking you, what do you think?
Well, I've told you what I'm going to tell you. Thank you.
Mr. President, is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Any public comment? No? Any topics? next item. Mr. President, I think Commissioner Bell said he would take that to the.
We'll take the PPC on the 27th.
Well, what it is I have until the 21st to move the fence.
Well, I can't get you that, but I'll take it on the 27th to make the request for it. That's all I can do. That's how we can do it tomorrow.
Additions to agenda. Any changes? I think item 9E will be removed since we went over together public comment. You have changes, Mr. Manager? Mr. Mike?
The three items from the Macon County Public Health grant request and sliding fee schedule. I think Tammy and Diane are here to address those.
Okay, so let's make item 11C, public health, and what's the topic, please?
There were three grant requests
Three grant requests?
and sliding fee schedule.
Requests. And sliding fee schedule. Another item? Sir, Mike, was that it on yours, those two
That's all
items?
I have.
Commissioner Bell, Commissioner Shields, those are us. Board?
Yeah, I think Mike had emailed the agenda packet, and John Bay had contacted me after the agenda deadline, and, so we need to add budget amendment number 141 in with the budget amendments under consent, please. And that's just an amendment for $15,000 additional dollars from the Duke Energy Helping Home Fund, which will again go to help citizens here in Macon County. There's no match funds required.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chester? All right, we'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve, Jeff.
A motion, second, all in favor? Aye. Item 9A, Cooperative Extension Annual Report. Welcome, Mr. Durden. I had the privilege of taking a continuing education class with Mr. Durden a few weeks ago. He's a wise man. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with me.
That's very kind, thank you. And I do want to thank you all for letting me have the time tonight to talk to you and talk to you a little bit about cooperative extension, and I want to thank you for your support of cooperative extension. With your support, we try and improve the quality of people's lives, their health, their environment, their economic well-being, and some of the examples of the things that we do were found in the document that I've given you tonight. So I won't read it to you. I'll try and be as brief as I can. But I would ask that I hope you will read it and see some of the things that we've done. Of course, it can't capture all that we do, but those are some of the things. There are some numbers in there, though, and I want to touch on those numbers. And remember that our product is education. We don't have funds to support programs for farmers or programs for citizens. We don't have any of that, but we do support people with education. That's our product. That's what we do. Staff members of the Macon County Center conducted or participated in 206 meetings, workshops, demonstrations, lectures, tours, in the delivery of educational information to the citizens of Macon County. 4,524 people attended 739 hours of classroom and field instruction. Extension personnel in Macon County had over 14,500 face-to-face educational contacts in 2016. Macon County Cooperative Extension received $26,761 from supporters through donations, fundraisers, and program fees. Our 4-H Market Steer program, which has been a big success and has helped bring the steer program back to the county fair, as well as our 4-H Market Lamb program, received the greatest part of those donations. Volunteers assisted cooperative extension programming, giving 3,849 volunteer hours with a value of $90,682. This is equivalent to 1.9 full-time employees. And many of those hours are donated to 4-H in the programs that I've mentioned, and many are donated to the development and the maintenance of the Macon County Environmental Resource Center. And I know you fellows met out there with the planning board, I believe, just a few weeks ago. That landscape is totally developed, supported, and maintained by master gardeners. Many hours are donated to the Macon County Fair. The Macon County Fair is a real important part of the culture of Macon County, and we're glad to be able to be a part of that. And I ask I ask each of the agents not to read to you all the things in that, but I ask each of the agents to describe to me what they felt were their most important programs, what they did that really impacted the people's lives that they work with. And what they told me, our 4-H agent said that she felt like the shooting sports program that she conducts. There's an archery part of it, there is air rifle and air pistols. We've had participants go on to state competitions and one to go to national competition a few years ago. We had the livestock clubs, sheep and steers, and we have club for horses. Our horse bowl team went to Raleigh 2 weekends ago, and this is a state competition, and though we did not place in the money, so to speak, our group placed 6th, and we're real proud of that. 4-H teaches young people responsibility, leadership, animal science, and gun safety. There's a lot of things that are involved in the programs that we do with young people. In Family and Consumer Science, which we now have a Family and Consumer Science agent, thanks to you gentlemen, and I appreciate the support, being able to fund that position. She has opened up Safe Plates, which is used to be called Serve Safe, trains food service workers in Macon County in safe food handling practices. She also does home preservation for the citizens of Macon County, and teaching our food service workers and our county residents the right way to prepare and serve and preserve food is very important, and it possibly can save lives. We hope we don't ever hear of somebody getting sick from botulism, but botulism can cost over $700,000 from start to finish for one case. So we really like to be sure that we teach the right ways to do things. In agriculture, we have pesticide exams now in Macon County, and what that does is allow people to obtain their pesticide license here in Macon without going to Asheville, without taking days off work. So it saves them money and time. We recently had one, and we had an 83% pass rate on 24 tests that were given. All 10 of the folks that attended our pre-test review passed. There was no failure with that. The license is sometimes a job requirement, and acquiring license teaches the safe use of pesticides, which is extremely important. There were 130 more soil tests taken this year than in the previous year. That's a direct response to classes that our newest ag agent, Joe Gill, conducted. And so we were real happy with that. Soil testing is the only way that a farmer can know what to add to his soil to achieve optimum growth of his crop. And it saves money. You don't over-fertilize, you don't under-fertilize, as well as it prevents over-fertilization, the nutrients from leaching into the soil water and the groundwater, which is a very important thing for all of us. We provided 7 hours of continuing education credits to certified landscape contractors. And the credits are required to maintain the license, and when they're offered close to home, it saves time and money for our landscape contractors. And last, something that I'm very, very proud of, we had a pesticide disposal day. In the year 2016, we collected 3,171 pounds of unwanted pesticides in Macon County in 609 containers. They were disposed of in an environmentally friendly way. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened to those, but that's 1.5 tons of pesticides. So that's the equivalent of somebody coming to your office every day of the week, in weekdays, and bringing you a 10-pound bag of pesticide, or sometimes, because it varies, and giving it to you and asking you to get rid of it. And so that's what, every day. There's a lot of pesticides out there, and we'll continue to help those as long as we can. So with that, I'm done, and again, I appreciate what you do for us, the support that you give Macon County, or Cooperative Extension, and thank you very much. Any questions that I can answer?
That works 2 ways. We appreciate your service to Macon County, no doubt.
You started on your 4-H, do they still have if we didn't talk about the time, do they still have a cleanup part of their activities?
You know, I was thinking about those type of things. 4-H does service work. Some of our groups do have service projects. They've worked with the Macon County Animal Shelter, walking the animals over there from time to time. They visit some of our retirement facilities. But as far as I'm aware of, they haven't conducted litter pickups in the last few years. That's something that our community clubs have been very involved with over the past 20, 30 years. They've gotten away from it a little bit, but that is something that our next community development council meeting I'll bring up to them. They are always looking for projects, and almost every community, we've got 9 organized communities in Macon County, and almost every community has a person, an individual, or multiple individuals that pick up litter in their communities. So that is done, but not everywhere in Macon County is organized. It's just directly in the areas that aren't that we probably have pretty regular pickup. And those would be secondary roads rather than main roads.
Mr. Chairman, I think needs to be said that one of our legislative goals, as you know, we all know, is to bring the funding levels back to the extension service that it was in 2008. That we're very lucky where we're at to have a full extension service, full agent. Not many counties have that anymore, as you well know. So we're blessed to, but through North Carolina State University, that is one of our legislative goals, and that is, we hope to see a bill come out with that through the North Carolina State University. Because you can't even find it in the budget.
No, we've got as you know, we've got a new director, Richard Bonanno, and Rich is working real hard along those same lines. And you probably, I would be surprised if you hadn't talked to him about it.
We have.
But Richard is looking to get that line item. We're, and I won't even go to where it's at because it is buried deeply in the university budget at NC State. We're trying to get that out and get some funds restored that have been taken from us. We get all the cuts that the university gets. We pay our share, but then when there are funding increases to the university, we don't tend to get that. So, but that's good.
That's certainly been noticed and it's been talked about.
Right. We appreciate it.
A lot of counties, including our county.
Appreciate everything that you do.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, item 9B, Future Business Leaders of America. Come on down, I like the price is right.
My sister Michelle Briggs is over the FBLA in the high school, and they have a project again this year for the colon cancer awareness. Colon cancer awareness is the month of March. So I'm going to let these kids say a few things in Ms. Brooks.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Brooks.
I'm the baby. Yeah. Sure reminds me of that often. I want to thank you all again for letting us speak here. We spoke here back in October. We had several businesses that joined in with us and bought the t-shirts. We went around to the businesses the day before our concert, which they're going to tell you about, and took pictures with them. Good advertisement for them, good PR for us and for them. There was an item on, I think it was World News Tonight, and it was talking about the age of colon cancer getting younger and younger, the diagnoses. And it was talking about the millennials are really starting to see more of it. And so we're talking, 20s. So we need to do some lobbying for the health care industry and insurance agencies or insurance companies to make the screening age lower than 50, because that's way too old. Not the 50s getting younger and younger all the time, but anyway, it's too old for screening. I'm getting close to that. So anyway, that's what we'd like to see one day. But anyway, these kids are going to, or my 2 students from Embers are going to talk about our community service project. This is Caroline Foster and Jacob Smith, and I'll let them talk to you.
Back in October, we had a colon cancer awareness concert, which is our community service project for our competitions for FDLA, and we had Mr. Wade Hayes come and sing for us, and he told his story, and he's also a stage 4 colon cancer survivor. And then next week we will be going to Greensboro for our state conference or competition, and then if we qualify for our competitions, we will be going in June to Anaheim, California for our nationals.
We hope you win.
And also to add to that, Mr. Wade Hayes will be coming back for our Relay for Life event, and he will be our guest speaker, and he will also perform for us.
You got a date on it?
May 19th.
May 19th.
And also, we raised $17,000 for our concert, and we donated some of that to Relay for Life, and also we created scholarships for colon cancer survivors.
Just one comment I want to make. I want to thank my Macon County employee family. They support this all the way. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. Same one I asked Mr. Durgan. Appreciate what you're doing, knocking out the cancer. Are you going to be on the National Honor Society?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, let me ask this question. Do you know if they still, as part of their project each year, if they do cleanup?
Yeah, they just did one last Saturday, last Sunday.
Okay. Appreciate what you do, but don't put that other one in the trash, you know.
That may be something that'll
Right. And it's part of that education thing. We always say trash attracts trash. If you get your trash cleaned up, you usually have less trash. And we appreciate what you do. Thank you. Appreciate what you do.
Did y'all introduce yourselves? I'm trying, I'm not sitting tonight.
I'm Jacob Smith.
I'm trying to do it again.
Jacob Smith.
Jacob Smith.
I'm Caroline Foster.
So y'all, what are you doing in Greensboro? What do you got to do to win?
I am competing in, I took a test online for health care administrations, and there's just health questions to see. And then I'm also doing, it's called Cheer Chant, where you make up a chant for, I guess for like the state, and then there's other like public speaking and computer applications, just different. I mean, there's a wide range.
I as well, I took a test online for advertising, and I studied for the test a week before the actual, when we had the test. There was some marketing aspects on there, and there was also advertising, having to deal with the whole advertising aspect, like everything that goes under the advertising. And it was, I believe, 100 questions.
Who helped you do this?
Yeah, they're going with us. I've got 22 going with me, and Mr. O'Leary, I think, has 11 that we're taking down there. And then I've got 2 state officers this year, Rosenberg and Grant Van Dyke. Rossen's our Western Region Vice President, which had baseball tonight and couldn't get here. And then Grant has a sick brother who's going to come as well. Just cold. But he's our state parliamentarian. And so it's pretty unique that Macon County has 2 state officers. We only have 8 state officers in the state of North Carolina, and we have 2 of them. I've traveled with them all year. So we've gone to Dallas, we've gone to Atlanta for nationals. Nationals in Anaheim, California. Bryson, my son Trevor, and Crystal Watson will be presenting this community service project, which we have been practicing over and over. Maybe a little bit tired of the presentation, but they're going to do great. So.
Good enough.
It's great. It's awesome.
Thank you. It'd be great.
Thank you for your support.
Trying to take this, don't teach me how to do that in my
Jacob, you got a long, if you can do that, you'll win the competition.
Thank you. Item 9C, financial analysis and capital improvements. Davenport County.
Mr. Chairman, while Mitch is coming up here, I would just like to say that as we were discussing our goals in the budget work session, we were very clear that many of the commissioners had discussed capital projects and planning for those capital projects in the future, along with the board had also expressed some desire for us to look at the possibility of paying off some of our debt early. Davenport and Company offers both of these services. We have worked with them previously. Lori is familiar with Davenport. Mitch and I have known each other for 3 or 4 years now. And so we just ask Mitch to just take a look at our organization and what some of this stuff would look like should we decide to pursue this in the coming budget year. So what he's going to give you is just a brief overview of that. He's traveled from Charlotte tonight, and we appreciate you being here, Mitch.
I appreciate you having us, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As Derek was saying, we understand the two questions that you all had, and two of the goals that coming out of the retreat were potentially looking at your debt profile to see if there was any savings opportunities through refinancing or paying off debt, and potentially implementing a CIP program. And those two go hand in hand. And what you need to have in order to accomplish either one of those is you need to be in a good financial condition. So we wanted to start by taking a high-level look at Macon County and your current financial condition to determine whether you have some options to consider either paying off debt or taking on a more formal CIP process. And cut to the chase, to save any of the drama, you all are in very good financial shape. And I think we'll see that through a couple of these slides that I just wanted to walk through with you. The first thing we wanted to do was look at your credit overview. So one of the ways that municipalities, counties like yourselves, measure their financial performance or their credit is a term for people's willingness to lend money to you. One of the most common ways to do that is through the rating agencies. Not everybody's rated. I think there's, out of the 100 counties in North Carolina, I think there's 33 counties who are not rated. You all fall into that category of being not rated. Because you don't have any public debt outstanding. You don't have any public bond issues outstanding. So therefore, you do not need a formal credit rating. You were previously rated. You did have public debt outstanding. That was retired in 2015 when the 2004 certificates of participation were refinanced. When you did have a credit rating, you all, the county itself, would have been rated an equivalent of AA2 by Moody's Investor Service and AA- by Standard & Poor's. That is in the second highest rating category. The highest rating category that you can get, and I don't know if y'all can see this on your screens or not, but is this AAA category. That's the absolute highest that you can get. The second highest category is this AA category, AA1, AA2, AA3, and then you get into the single A category, A1, A2, and A3. So you all, based upon your prior credit rating, would be in this AA category, AA2 by Moody's, AA- by S&P. So you're starting from a place of strength with your credit. And a little bit of background on that credit, what goes into that. There's some things that go into the credit rating that you all have direct control over. There's other things that you all do not have as much control over. So for example, under both Moody's and S&P's methodologies, economy and tax base represents 30% of the credit rating process. That's about a third. That's something that you all can impact over the long term through policies, economic development, but that's not something that you all can make a decision on this evening to quickly impact your credit rating score for economy. But there are other things that we'll focus on and take a look at: finances, fund balance, debt outstanding, management practices, including financial policies. Those are the type of things that you all have more direct control over and can impact and steer the county into a good financial condition. And certainly you've done that in the past and could continue to do that. So specific to you all, looking at some numbers, we looked at the past 5 years of your financial performance, and I know these are small numbers here. The graphs may be easier to look at, but what we're looking at is general fund balance. And you all have done nicely over the years, particularly the most recent 3 years. You all have added to your unassigned fund balance. That's sort of your bottom bucket or your rainy day fund. Those fund balances are not earmarked for any specific expenditures. Those are your emergency funds, your rainy day funds, your opportunity funds to use and deploy. They're also there to provide a cushion should there be a shock to revenues or a shock to expenditures. the county has the capacity to handle that and still maintain a good financial condition. So you all, as I said, you can see in the graphs over the last 3 years, you all have nicely grown your general fund balance, and we're looking at this as both a percent of revenues and a percent of expenditures. You all have grown that general fund balance in total and that bottom bucket of unassigned or rainy day funds. We understand that you all do maintain an informal policy of maintaining a minimum available fund balance. That's one of the characteristics the LGC looks at, the available fund balance. That's the cash that you could get to if you needed to, of 25%, no lower than 25%. I also understand there may have been some discussions about establishing a slightly higher target going forward, understanding where you are now. That is something that we would encourage you to do, and perhaps consider formalizing a fund balance policy, adopting a formal fund balance policy, and if you were to do that, we would recommend that you consider, at a minimum, establishing a minimum fund balance target, but also consider adding on to that policy a description of what you would do, number one, if you're in excess of that policy. We would recommend, and the rating agencies and lenders like to see, that you use those fund balances for one-time expenditures. Things like capital, things like paying off debt. Because if you use fund balance to fund an operating expense, those operating expenses are ongoing, recurring, they're going to happen every year, but your fund balance is a one-time source. It can go away quickly if you use it on a continuous basis. So you may consider thinking about formalizing that fund balance policy, and as part of that, establishing a methodology or some goals for what you would use that any fund balance in excess of that policy for. And as you continue to think about options and implementing a CIP, that's something that you could potentially do at the same time. You don't want to look at it in a vacuum. You want to make sure it fits in to your overall plan. So understanding where you are, certainly I think there's some opportunities with the way you've performed over the last few years to think about paying off debt or setting up a formal capital improvement plan. And so looking at the first one of those, potentially paying off debt, we've listed here the details, high-level details of each of your individual outstanding loans. You all have about 12 outstanding loans at this point in time. All of them have very good interest rates associated. I think the two that would probably jump out at you when looking at this are the 2010 QZAB, that's a Qualified Zone Academy bond with BB&T, and the 2010 QSCAB, which is a Qualified School Construction bond. Those rates of a 655 and a 549, those are high, but those are federal programs. The QZABs and the QSCABs are federal programs where you all are receiving a subsidy from the federal government that offsets that interest rate. So in reality, those are near zero interest loans when you factor in that federal subsidy. So those are not ones that we would recommend that you look at for paying off. The rest of your loans are at a 2.6% or lower. That's a very good interest rate. The ones that are at a 2.6% have a longer term amortization. Those are longer interest, those are longer loans, which makes sense why they have the slightly higher interest rate. But we did want to give you a little bit of perspective on what it could look like if you were to choose to pay off some of these loans with fund balance. I will give you the caveat that this is a high-level analysis. We would want to dig into the details, particularly looking at that last column, what we've called the call provisions or the prepayment provisions. We would need to work with staff to really dig into the details of the loan documents and understand that to make sure that paying off those loans early was a possibility. But for perspective, we looked at the two highlighted loans, the 2007 BB&T loan, $1.2 million at a 2.49% interest rate, and the 2009 note, which is actually with Diener, that's a state revolving loan, for $1.5 million at a 256. So looking at the BB&T loan, if you were to pay this off now, you have made some payments on this so far this year, you would be retiring about $950,000 today if you were to pay this off. When I say today, we've assumed a July payoff date. The next payment is due on July 14th, so we're assuming that you would pay that off on the next payment date. July 14th, you would be paying off about $953,000 of principal outstanding. Looking at this loan, we've done a number of BB&T transactions, and their most common prepayment penalty is a 1% prepayment penalty. So we've assumed there would be a 1% penalty to prepay this loan. Again, that's something that we would need to dig into to clarify. But assuming that 1% prepayment penalty, you would need to pay off, over in column F, the $953,000 in principal and the $9,500 of a prepayment penalty. So you would have to come up with $962,000 from fund balance or other revenues to prepay this loan early. And what would that do for you? What is the benefit there? Well, in column B, this prior debt service, these are the payments that you have remaining on that BB&T loan. It totals $1,024,000 through fiscal year 2023. If you paid it off up front, you would be paying that $962,000 in fiscal year 18. So that would leave you in fiscal year 18, it would leave you with a net cost of $864,000. You would be foregoing, or you would have already been paying the $98,000 of debt service. You would be foregoing that by paying the $962,000 up front, and then you would be saving those future payments in the latter years. In total, that would be a savings of about $61,500, saving on those interest costs over time by paying that loan up front. Now, the one thing that we did want to add to this analysis is if you used this $962,000 this year to pay off that loan, it would no longer be in your fund balance. You would no longer be earning interest on that. So we wanted to account for those foregone interest earnings to make sure we're looking at the whole picture. So assuming that that's invested at the current North Carolina Capital Management Trust term portfolio yield, that's about a 0.83% today, the foregone interest earnings over this time period would be about $43,000, assuming no increase in the current level of interest rates. So net, your savings on this transaction, when netting out those foregone interest earnings, would be about $18,000. So if you were to do this, you would have about $18,000, assuming the current market interest rate for those foregone earnings. If that term portfolio yield were to go up to a 1.21%, it would essentially be a break-even transaction on paper. So again, this kind of shows you that 2.49%, 2.61%, those interest rates that you have are good interest rates. That's very good borrowing rate for longer term borrowings. And so to achieve the savings, you're not going to get as much bang for your buck necessarily as you could potentially do in some other things. Again, I won't walk through this one. You can see the drinking water loan. It's much the same story. This is a little bit of a longer loan. It goes out to 2031. So we wanted to make sure we gave you a range of paying off a shorter term loan, paying off a longer term loan, but it works out to about the same thing. If rates were to go up to 1.29%, on paper this would be about a break-even transaction. I should have mentioned up front, feel free to cut me off, ask questions along the way. I'd love to make this conversation. Yes, sir.
The rates, the current rate today is 0.8.
Yeah, yes, sir. When we ran this analysis in preparation for this meeting, it was about a 0.83%. And so what you see is rates over the last year or so, particularly since November, are on the way up. So they have been trending on a positive basis recently. General market consensus is that rates are going up. The Fed's, the short-term interest rates, people are projecting that the Fed will raise their overnight interest rate at least 2 more times this year, which would push short-term yields up, which is what this is. This is a short-term yield. So that would tend to be affected by that Fed movement. There's other things that affect yields outside of the Fed, the local economy, domestic economy, international economy, any number of things could change that trend. And right now is very applicable. About this time last year, we were in the same position. People thought that there was going to be at least 2 Fed increases last year before the end of the calendar year. And then the end of June came about, Brexit occurred, the UK voted to leave the European Union, and we saw Treasury rates and short-term rates go down dramatically. The Fed didn't end up raising interest rates. So, as you all know, it's difficult to project where rates are going to go. It's affected by a number of things. General market consensus is that rates are going to go up, but there could be another unknown event that could affect that, and we just can't forecast that. But for perspective, I think to your point, Mr. Gillespie, rates have been trending up recently, and so we were at 0.83%. This is as of about 2 weeks ago when we ran this analysis. Rates have gone up a little bit since then, and you can see the general trend in this yield over the recent years. So from an outsider's perspective, looking at your debt portfolio, I say you all have done a very good job. You've done refinancings over the years to bring those interest rates down. You've managed to get very low interest rates on your new money borrowings. You all staff have done a great job in getting those interest rates low and managing your debt portfolio. That kind of makes these payoffs not necessarily as attractive as they would be if you hadn't been on top of your debt and had much higher interest rates. So if looking at these analyses, you'd like to dig into some other ones, we're happy to run those. But if the general thought is there anything else we could do with that money? I would say that would be your CIP plan. And when I say there may be more bang for your buck doing something else, if we're in a rising interest rate environment and you're trying to fund capital projects, perhaps using that cash to pay-as-you-go fund some of your capital, forego issuing longer-term 20-year debt for all of your future capital projects, that may be a better way to save on your interest component than actually paying off the lower interest loans that you have right now. So thinking about that, and one of your goals of developing a CIP, we like to approach this sort of as a partnership, and we do this with a number of counties around the state, helping them develop a CIP. And whether you were to work with Davenport or not, I think this is a good approach to take. And I think it's dual track at the beginning. First, you need to identify your financial resources that you have available. That's your fund balance in excess of your policy, potentially. That's your current revenues that you're using to pay debt service, your current revenues you're using to pay capital. You need to identify those resources that you have to fund capital projects. And you also need to evaluate your debt capacity and your debt affordability. And debt capacity is one specific term that I'll show you some examples of. Debt affordability is really how do you pay for it. And when I say debt affordability, that could also mean pay-as-you-go cash capital affordability as well. So that's where we typically come in and help our clients in this early phase, is trying to establish what are our resources, what is our capacity and our affordability for capital. And that is dual tracked at the same time with you all and staff determining the universe of capital needs. Where do we need to invest? What shape are our buildings in? Do they need work? Do they need to be replaced? Is there just maintenance projects throughout the county that we need to consider? And then once you get the universe, think about prioritizing those capital projects. What are our key priorities as a county? What do we need to address most and first? And then with those two data points, we know what resources and capacity we have, we know what our needs are, we can put together an initial CIP and look at a funding plan to see if those priorities and those capital projects that you've identified, if they're affordable, if you can fund them out of your resources and out of your debt capacity. it's an iterative process. So the likelihood of you all identifying projects and matching up with your funding capacity to start with doesn't happen very often. So once you marry those two up, we can help you determine where are we short, how can we move some projects around to potentially fit within our affordability and accomplish everything. It may not get done on the exact time frame that you'd like to get done, but we can look at shifting out some projects. We may learn that you do have more capacity and you could accelerate some of the projects if you wanted to do that. But that's the iterative part of the process. Once we establish that baseline model for affordability and capacity, and you all have a list of projects, then we can tweak it, make sure the two match up, and ultimately come out with several revisions and ultimately end up with what we call a balanced CIP, where we have identified funding sources for each of the projects that you ultimately include in an adopted CIP. Harkening back to the rating agencies and your credit, that's one of the key things that they like to see is planning for the future, planning for capital down the line, and having a balanced approach to that between pay-as-you-go capital and debt issuance. So a little perspective on how that could work. We took a look at your existing debt profile and started to think about how we would look at your debt capacity and your debt affordability. Just a little bit more time here. Your existing tax-supported debt, you have about $31.8 million of debt outstanding, and that's principal outstanding. Your interest component to that is $5.8 million. So on the $31.8 million of debt you have outstanding, you're going to be paying $5.8 million in interest over time. Your debt is going to pay off by 2031. So you're going to have all of your debt paid off within the next 15 years. And one of the key ratios that we look at, and when we think about debt capacity, is the far right-hand column here, this 10-year payout ratio. That is a measure of the percent of your principal outstanding you're repaying over the first 10 years. So at 83.8%, you all are repaying $26.6 million of debt back over the next 10 years. That's a very good payout ratio, that you're paying off your debt quickly. You don't have, you're not deferring the principal payments. And what that does is that creates an opportunity as you pay off that existing debt. You could consider issuing new debt to replace the debt that you paid off under your existing resources, or you could use it for pay-as-you-go cash or capital. But to put that 10-year payout ratio into perspective, you all will be at paying off 100% of your debt here within the next 6 years. We've set up on the right-hand side of the page a peer comparative, and what we're looking at here is the medians for the AAA. We're using all Moody's rated counties nationally in North Carolina, AAA, AA, and single A. Remember, the AAA is the highest possible rating category you could be. The AA is the second highest. That's where we would anticipate you all fall out. And then the single A is the third highest rating category. So the green bars are derived from Moody's Investor Service, a subscription that we have, is the exact data that the rating analysts are looking at when they rate credits. This is the median of all the data for the national counties, and the dark green is the median data for all of the North Carolina Moody's rated counties. And so you can see you all at 86% 10-year payout ratio are on the top end of these medians. We are looking at the medians, so half of the data is higher, half of the data is lower, but this gives us a good sense of the range, and you all are on that upper end of the range. So we would say under this ratio, you have debt capacity to consider taking on additional debt as part of the CIP process. As part of the CIP, one of the things that we would recommend is that you all consider, again, adopting or formalizing a set of debt policies in addition to a fund balance policy. That serves multiple purposes. Number one, it formalizes good practices that ensures from a ratings perspective, that you're doing new debt responsibly, and quite honestly, it checks off a box that you have financial policies for them. But the second component is just for yourselves and for the community, that as you take on new debt, you have an adopted set of policies. If you do choose to take on new debt, you will be doing it in a responsible fashion under a set of policies that you all have adopted. So it serves kind of a twofold purpose there. And so that's something you all may want to consider as you take on consider taking on a capital improvement plan. Two more key ratios. I won't go through these as long, but the next one is debt to assessed value. That's a measure of your debt outstanding, $31.8 million, divided by your total tax base. This is a measure of how leveraged is your tax base. What is your debt compared to your tax base? And you all are at 0.4%. You can see from a median perspective, those same medians, you're lower than all of the medians. We do recommend you may consider a policy on debt to assessed value as well. Typically, we look at our clients setting policies in the 2 to 3% range. You all are at 0.4%, so you're a fraction of that potential policy. You're well below the medians. Again, you've managed your debt portfolio well, and we would say you have debt capacity under this ratio to consider taking on additional debt. The last ratio that we look at is debt service to expenditures. This is a measure of your annual debt service divided by your total governmental expenditure budget. This is another key ratio that we recommend a policy on, that the rating agencies look at and focus on. And this is kind of a measure of flexibility within your budget. The debt service payment is a fixed payment. You've got to make it every year. You know what it is and you have to make it. You can't furlough a debt service payment. You can't turn the lights off early on a debt service payment and save on it. That is what it is. You got to pay it every year. You can't control that expenditure. So it's a measure of flexibility within your budget. And you all are at about 7.8% of your budget is in debt service. That's a good level when we look at you compared to the medians. You're below the North Carolina AAA and AA median. The national medians on debt to assessed value and debt service to expenditures lose a little bit of comparability because in certain states like South Carolina, Pennsylvania, they have school boards, school districts that issue debt to fund schools. That debt doesn't show up on the county books. So it's not as apples to apples to you all as the North Carolina medians are. But either way, we would say under this ratio, under a potential policy, whether it be somewhere in the 12 to 18% range, or compared to the medians, you all have debt capacity again under this ratio. So you all manage yourselves well. You're starting from a position of strength, and particularly when thinking about implementing a capital plan, you've got capacity to consider that capital plan and using debt as a piece, as a tool in funding that capital program, just based upon where you are under these ratios.
Deb, what is your opinion that, let's say we've done the capital plan, and we have a capital plan, and we add all those numbers up, and let's say we're going to spend $3 million. Is it not true that it would not hurt our ratios if this board decided to spend, if you spend up to 40% or more in cash and borrow the rest, and put the collateral for that project up as, it's not going to hurt our ratio, that's your fault.
That's true. I don't think, you're talking about in that case, $3 million of projects.
We're going to put up 1.4.
Putting up 1.4, borrowing 1.6 million is not going to have any impact whatsoever on these ratios. And so, but that's exactly the point of what we're going to want to do is look at that capital plan and run it through this model to see how it does impact your ratio.
As long as we can get it 1.3%. Okay, thank you.
So that's half of it. That's the debt capacity under some of these key ratios. The other side of it, and normally the more challenging side of it, is the debt affordability. Can you pay for it within your existing resources? And so we've set up a sample here, and I know these are very small numbers, but we've set up
yes, they are.
we've set up a sample here to show you what this could look like. We would want to dig in with staff a little bit more into this and understand all the details. But just for example purposes, you all in column B, this is your existing debt service. It's the $37.6 million. That's the total payback, principal and interest on your existing debt. Jumping on in here. In fiscal year 17, that payment worked out to be about $4.3 million. In your budget, the fiscal year 17 budget, you had several different revenue sources budgeted to pay this debt service. You had transfers to the debt service fund from the general fund, transfers to the debt service fund from Fund 21, which I believe is the school fund. You had the debt service fund revenues, which is coming from some of the sewer revenues that come in. Then you had North Carolina lottery funds, which are restricted for school expenditures. We did pay off some debt in 2017, which reduced this debt service budget. And when factoring in the subsidies on that QZAB and the QSCAB that I told you about, all in, your revenues in column N were about $4.5 million. So when you paid off that debt, that left you with a surplus of about $100,000 in your FY17 budget. One of the things that you could consider doing is flatlining your FY17 budget. So you all have these revenue sources that we're showing in your 17 budget. Those are paid, we understand, from recurring revenue sources. Those are annual revenues that are available. You could consider leaving that budget flat. So next year, your debt service is stepping down. It steps down from $4.39 million to $3.88 million. You could consider maintaining your FY17 budget level, those same transfers, maintaining that so that as your debt service pays down, you would be creating capacity or affordability for future capital projects or future debt service. And that's what you see here in column O, is how those revenue sources are going to increase over time as your existing debt service pays down. That could be a baseline or a starting point for measuring a capital program and your affordability within that capital program and your ability to take on additional capital projects. But the crucial part about that is maintaining your FY17 budget level, which you would be doing in the upcoming budget process. If you all choose to go through this CIP initiative, it would be about, I would say it would probably be about a 9 to 12 month process, just in terms of fine-tuning this information, identifying the resources available, setting up these models. We can do that fairly quickly, but the more difficult part of that, or the more time-consuming part of that, I should say, is that project identification phase. Particularly, you're already deep in the middle of a budget right now. Staff, department heads are all very busy with that. So realistically, if you were to look to implement a CIP, we would say it's probably part of next year's budget process. Get through this year's budget, then we can start the planning process, gathering of the projects at the staff and the department head level to be able to have that information available for you all to look at and consider. At the same time, we can be working on the financial resources, the debt capacity, the debt affordability, and ultimately, as part of the budget process next year, have a series of presentations for you all to consider and look at, and if you choose to, ultimately adopt a CIP process.
So you're saying fiscal year 17-18, the coming budget, we would be working on identifying projects, gathering the financial information to be implemented in fiscal year 18-19.
That's right. So this coming budget year, fiscal year 18, July 1 of 17 to June 30 of 18, you take that time to really dig into your capital needs. What are our projects? What are some of our priorities? we'll do the financial resources side of things, and then probably December of 17, January of 18 timeframe, we'll be looking at a work session or a board retreat just as the initial kickoff to that CIP process. And then we could have a series of meetings as part of your normal budget process to fine tune the CIP, and it could be adopted for the FY19
For those of us
budget
might
year.
not be here then, we'd like to get some of that stuff done before we leave,
Yes, sir.
so that's, your schedule will work.
Understood. I think you could certainly, if there's immediate needs, immediate projects, you have resources available that you could.
I mean, we got a senior citizen center, we gotta look at them now. I mean, just.
Yes, sir.
You don't know that, but.
Yes, sir. And certainly, if that's the number one priority, we need to address it this coming year.
Some of us will not be here in that December of 19.
Yes, sir. Understood. I think we could look at this and tell you the impact of that one specific project on your profile to see if you all are comfortable moving forward with that earlier than the full CIP process.
Okay. We have to decide. That ain't up to me.
Yes, sir. Understood. But if you take away anything, I would say you've managed yourselves very well and you have debt capacity. If you're able to maintain your FY17 budget moving forward, you have affordability to consider taking on some projects. It's the timing and the magnitude of those projects that we'll need to evaluate to see if they fit within a potential plan. H, thank you. Absolutely.
Good job. Like we had the bank meeting.
I'd like to say thank you for coming, appreciate your input, obviously, you've got some time and effort put in, it's very, very educational, and I'd like to commend county manager on bringing you in, so, good choice, thank you.
I learned a lot. Bob, I appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Bank meeting.
It's made me, I mean, just
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Got copies for all.
opened up a whole new can of worms and a whole new light box in my brain. Commissioner Shields?
I thought you had something to go ahead now.
Yes.
We're gonna email them.
And I might just say this, please keep this in mind. We want to dig into this with staff a little bit more. Don't hold us to every number in there. We're going to fine tune that along the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.
We're going to do item 9D, and then we'll take about a 10-minute recess. Item 9D, building and recovery community. Welcome. I know who you are now.
Hey, dude, I know who you are too.
I know. Got a couple of handouts, and I brought along a student as well. So I appreciate everybody allowing us to come and visit with you. So I'm Christy Wyatt. I work at Western Carolina University as a substance use and mental health counselor in the counseling office there. So what I really want to do is just introduce you to briefly a little bit about what a recovery community is. Last week I had an opportunity to go to Raleigh and meet with people from around the state and look at what does it take to develop a recovery community. And it takes an effort from everybody. It does take all employees, all citizens to develop a recovery community. So this is just a very brief overview of what a recovery community could look like. And I want to bring your attention to this little spot right over here. This is a collegiate recovery. And what we did at Western Carolina University is we started a collegiate recovery specifically to help students who are in recovery go back to school and get their education. We didn't want students to have to choose between getting their recovery and their education, because oftentimes going back to college can be a very hazardous place for students, and it can be a very scary place for students. And so what we did is we got a grant and we started a collegiate recovery. And I am going to introduce to you Elvin Peace. He is one of our students that participates, but
the reason why I want him to talk is he can speak to the importance of a collegiate recovery and a recovery community as a whole.
Everyone, welcome. I almost did. Wife and I decided we were going to, after we raised the kids, we were going to take our time and go back to school. It's been a wonderful process. And again, my name's Elvin Peace. I have been in recovery for 11 years. Okay, good. Thank you. And many years before that, I was not, and it was a long process. I call it my dark night, like the St. John of the Cross book. And so a lot of work went into myself, looking for resources, trying to find my way in order to be able to go to school. Now that I'm there, I helped Christy, and we took on a whole project of building a collegiate recovery community, which has been extraordinary education. Not just to get to go to school for social work and psychology, also get the experience of building that community. What's involved in building a community, a recovery community? What's that culture like? What's the ins and outs of making that happen? And I learned it's a hard process. Like in this diagram, all the facets that goes, that's involved. There's so many things, so many people, so many minds you have to work with and slowly change to work on stigma. So we are changing the culture at Western. We're seeing people come out and say, hey, I'm in recovery. Some of my favorites, whenever I'm working with, we do groups and stuff like that. I'm working with individuals, and they may be in their senior year, and their words are, hey, I wish I had this syndrome. I wish I didn't have to run out of that back door of this building, because if I went out the front, someone would have seen me in this recovery. So we're changing that. All that hard work, changing that so that we're getting allies, finding allies throughout the staff, and find out why people aren't. Find someone's want that's not, I talk to them. Find out what it is they want. What are their needs? How can we make them an ally? And changing minds, as with any community, that hard work goes into, as I heard here, lots of projects and things going on, trying to change the patterns of the community, as demonstrated earlier. We do the same thing. We do research. We're doing lots of research and trying to find out what the culture is at Western. What are the needs? What else can we do in order to make that transition for students? But all that applies everywhere. Everywhere. All those lessons that we're learning actually are equally as valuable here or anywhere else. So we're hard at work at changing minds, reversing stigma, and building a community that people can come out and freely talk about their recovery and face their addictions, whatever they may be. That's what we do. Thank you.
Sure. So part of that importance of to get there, thank you so much. So part of the importance to get there is looking at those statistics. Oftentimes, they go through the legal system first. So this is a research study that came out of the Hayward Community Jail. What I want to draw your attention to is what they were seeing is 85.5% of all the inmates had at least one substance use disorder. They were diagnosable with a substance use disorder. 48.1% were diagnosed with PTSD. 66.8% have been booked at least once before in the past 12 months. So really what they're looking at here is how do we help these inmates get into recovery? Because the reality is mandated recovery or mandated treatment does work. You might hear otherwise, but the research shows that mandated treatment works. And so if we can get these folks that are in the system in recovery and back into our education system, they're some of the most creative, amazingly compassionate people that I've ever met. So if you think about how much work it takes to sell drugs, move drugs, use drugs, that's a lot of creativity. So if we can take that and use it for other things, these are some pretty intelligent folks, very creative folks. So let's get them back into the community and be part of our community and be here at those meetings. So that's why we got to give them hope of recovery, develop these communities of recovery, so that they know that once they go into recovery and beat this disease, that they've got a place in our communities to participate and go back to school, become a psychologist, whatever it takes. Part of another, I want to draw this to your attention. I just saw this last Friday. I went to the prayer meeting for recovery, and which is where I met Commissioner Gary Shields. And I saw this there, and this really drew my attention. I didn't know what was going on. It's yeah.
7 on your.
Yeah, I didn't give you a copy of this. I'm sorry. This is Building a Recovery Community. The NAMI here in Macon County has invited Donald McDonald, who was actually at Western, speaking at Western 2 weeks ago, so I didn't even know he was coming to Macon County. I would encourage folks to come to this because he's going to go in a lot more depth about what it takes for a community to develop this recovery mentality that, yes, our people that live here in this community. And I am a resident of Macon County, so I get it. I live here. I work in Jackson County, I've lived in Graham County, and I've lived in Swain County. So I understand the importance of this. This is Catamounts for Recovery, and this was the last sheet on there. And this is what we're developing at Western Carolina University. It's currently a student organization, which means I'm just the advisor. It's our students who are running this organization. We have over 25 students who are participating in this right now, whether they're in recovery from drugs and alcohol or a mental health issue. These folks are in recovery and they want their education. And so we're there to support them. This statistic, 1 person in every classroom is in recovery, that's for drugs and alcohol. We did a needs assessment a couple years ago, and over 400 students identified as being in recovery from drugs and alcohol. Another 800 in recovery from mental health issues. So that's a lot of students that are identified as being in recovery. So these folks are our future. These are the ones that are going to be taking your places down the road. You were speaking of, well, I might not be here. This is our future. And I just want you guys to know that we're there, that we exist, that partnerships can happen. We've already partnered with Southwestern Community College to help those students move from Southwestern into Western and have those supports that they need. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. I know Elvin would be happy to answer those as a student from Western. But I'm just grateful to have this moment to let you know that we're there, that we're promoting recovery, and that recovery does happen. And students don't have to choose anymore. There's over 170 collegiate recoveries across the nation, and we even have recovery high schools that are growing now too.
We had this in the mental health task force when they came from Duke University and spoke to us. But here locally, like last night at the Carson Community on the stigma, fight the stigma issue, that's number 1.
Yep.
And you hear me speak to Francis T tonight.
Yeah.
Do you know Francis T?
I didn't know him.
Oh,
and
man.
it sounds like I
Last night, we had people in recovery that spoke last night. And first night we started off at Carson Community, we had just a few. We first started mental health task force, which was the first to Macon County. We did it first in the state. We had a few that would come, and a few more that would come. And the same thing you can see, we had a brave parent that stood out there and told about their son and all these other folks. But last night, I guess we had, I don't know, it was full house. I mean, this is parents and not only young people, but older ones, that to hear these folks stand up and talk about where they're at in their recovery, and the struggles they're having in their recovery. That's where the stigma, you fight the stigma. That's money. That's what's in the center of your little world out here.
Sure is.
So that's But then you gotta have a bad buddy in the job. Without a bad buddy in the job, none of that works. We found that out too. So.
Yeah,
But thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks all of us.
I appreciate
On
that.
April the 6th, educational activity will be in the Drake Education Center.
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah, we'll
6
be there.
p.m.
Yeah, April 6th at 6 p.m. I am not sure what the Drake Community Education Center is, but I'm going to find out.
Frogtown.
It's in Frogtown, okay, thank you. I'm still fairly new to Macon County, but I'm really excited to see what's going on here. And for those students that are standing up saying, hey, I'm in recovery, now they have a safe place to go at Western, so they can connect.
You were on the square the other night, there was there was one red line, go the next one, that's 2 red lines, right down the hill on the left.
Yeah, past the pumpkin roll?
Yes.
Okay. I've gone to the pumpkin roll, that was fun. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you,
Krista. Thanks, Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you, please.
Call some recess. Take a breather.
I think we're about getting ready to start. We're waiting on Commissioner Bill to come back.
Okay, good to see you.
We'll call this meeting back to order. And first item under new business is the foster care social worker. DSS Director, Mr. Patrick Betancourt. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. And I promised a lot of people that I'll be very brief, so I will be. We provided you a handout with regards to the request of a third foster care social worker. And I won't read all of the bullets to you related to that request. I would like to highlight just a couple of those bullets for you, though. We did assume custody of our 50th child last week. We currently have 2 social workers that provide foster care services at the Macon County Department of Social Services. Currently, those social workers are exceeding their state caseload expectations by 67%. They have a little over 10 cases each over the standard. For the past 10 over the standard. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. For about the past 6 years, we've been over standard, but we've been able to piece things together. Obviously, the numbers fluctuate, but we've got lots of assistance to be able to make that happen. Regrettably, at this point in time, though, the numbers have just become too much for us to be able to manage with 2 social workers. I can tell you what all the statistics are with respect to foster care and why those children come into custody. You probably know them just as well as I do. For the most part, 80% of our cases involve some form of substance abuse or another. About 50% of those cases involve some sort of mental health disorder. Those cases are becoming more and more complex every day. I won't take any more of your time, but I will entertain any questions that you might have about the request. Of course, Kathy Macon, the DSS budget officer, is also here to help answer any questions.
Patrick, it might be helpful for you to help them understand where those standards come from and why it is limited.
Right. Thank you. So the State Division of Social Services actually sets the caseload expectations. We are a county administered but state supervised system, so the state is the one who gets to help provide us with policy interpretations. Those standards exist primarily because of the information that I provided there towards the bottom about just how many regulatory actions take place per case, and in order to ensure that all of those regulatory touches on a case, if you will, happen in a timely fashion, the state recommends no more than 15 or so cases in order to ensure that all of those expectations are met.
any reason to believe that that trend will not continue to increase?
I don't. At this time, I don't.
Patrick, could you share with the board a little bit about, although it is going to be a new position, the county money is not going to be required to fund the position, I think.
We do get some revenues on child welfare positions. We conservatively estimate that we'll get about 50% revenues. Federal revenues can be a little bit higher than that, but we generally go with 50%, estimating that the state revenue will bring in that much. We'll let Kathy talk a little bit more about that. She certainly knows that piece much better than I do. But because federal and state participation rates differ, we provide you with estimates of about 50%. That's the state participation rate.
I've litigated those cases for probably about 30 years. So, any social worker who's got 25 of them is going way above and beyond calling duty.
On the TANF dollars, those rules keep doing this. We know that. On the TANF dollars, so it's still 50%. Where are we at with TANF dollars now?
Well, I'm glad to say if we don't keep losing social workers, we'll draw down all the funds this year. It is those full-time equivalencies draw down federal dollars on overhead as well as their salary and benefits. So we have to have people in the positions to draw those funds down. What I committed to Derek when we presented this position was that we have the money within the budget to pay for the position for the remaining part of the year easily. We actually now have lapsed salary to cover what I thought we might just have to transfer some of those TANF dollars to cover that position. Our plan next year would be to draw down the 4E CPS dollars, child welfare dollars, TANF dollars, to make that position happen. We have electing county status right now legislatively through fiscal year 19. Past that, there's no guarantee because it is a legislative action. And hopefully those numbers do decrease, but we can't count on that. But we did commit to Derek that should the numbers of the caseloads drop and we have any kind of vacancy, that we would not keep that position filled beyond that 2019 fiscal year. A lot of it depends on caseloads, as you have been
So the idea
informed.
is for this board to approve, for you to go ahead and start the process of advertising for another social worker and hope that you get qualified applicants.
Well, that's another part. We already have a social worker position in the Child Protective Services area being advertised, and it is very difficult to get qualified applicants, especially ones that have all the certifications and can start in the position and go from, right away without having to have the additional training and certifications. And so a foster care worker is a special individual. The fact that we have two workers, one of them that's been in there 20 years, is significant. You just don't see that in county departments of social services. And we don't want to lose these workers because burnout is certainly an issue with social workers, especially those that deal with foster care and traumatic situations routinely. So we'd like to get them some help, and we are going to utilize funds that we have, that we already have in the budget, within the budget itself.
The county manager and I had a discussion with the congressman and the senator about TANF dollars. And you read the budget that slipped out on Friday night that we saw, which those TANF dollars are being cut again in the federal budget, which they didn't pass yet. They don't know, really, remember what it means when you got this many foster kids. It looks like that money is being looked at again, and you saw it too, Pat. And we talked about that, the manager and myself, and what it would do to not only our county, but every, the temporary system for needy families is huge. And these numbers will just continue. Swain County is, the ratio is a high school state. We're not far behind. That's what I'm saying. So what do you need, just a motion to pursue, to go ahead and pursue the social worker?
That would be our
Is that
request.
right?
To
So
establish the
moved.
position.
So motion on the floor? Second. Any further discussion?
I'd like to ask, this will be your third person,
Yes, sir.
and it seems like 15 is the tops of caseload.
15 is the state recommended caseload.
And that equals 45, so you're already starting in the hole.
Yes, sir. We do have, as you'll see at the bottom of the sheet, we've got some methods that we utilize to help provide assistance to those workers. We do some contracting with some agencies to do some of that visitation, which allows them to focus on some of the paperwork requirements, but
Which are steep. They're steep and getting steeper.
they are. And especially now with foster care extending to age 21. While the state's picking up the room and board tab for that, the state is not providing any, nor are they providing any additional administrative dollars to cover that expanded time frame.
And the discussion we had with Patrick and James for him, and back when I was on the social board, you know, with foster kids, it, you know, I don't know how many we have out of county right now. I don't have
13.
13?
Yes, sir.
And explain to the board how that works back.
So the federal government provides requirements that say that every single foster child has to be visited 100% every month, with a certain percentage of those visits having to occur within that foster child's home. And so when we have children that are placed as far away as Winston-Salem or Charlotte, it takes about all day for a social worker to drive there, visit the child. Typically, in order to be able to visit a child in the home, that visit has to occur after hours. So oftentimes, it's not unusual for workers to be pulling back into the parking lot at 9, 10 o'clock at night after having been on the road all day to go visit a child. So we utilize some other strategies to help offset some of those demands. But there are specific regulatory requirements to see children every month, regardless of where they're placed, whether they're placed in Macon County or whether they're placed in New Hanover County.
And there are time limits on things that did not exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. Things have to be done on a quick timetable.
You see, you know, you litigated when we were on the board there to go see these kids. I mean, you would think that you could call a social worker in New Hanover County and they'd go in Wilmington and see that kid. That ain't how it works.
Well,
That's not how it
and
works.
another thing that's developed since I did a lot of it, probably the first 20 years I did work in that area, there was probably one family that had termination of criminal rights in 20 years. And back in those days, the state attorney general's office would send their representative over to handle. Your DSS office now handles it. And guess who the witnesses are in those cases? It's your foster parents. And those cases are extremely time consuming, extremely complicated.
We were down to one level 3 foster home this side of Haywood County. We've been working on that, trying to get that built up, and I know there's some level 1 foster homes that we have built up on, but we're still way behind. That's the reason a lot of these kids are having to leave the area. There's just no level 3 foster home.
If you've got a foster care worker who's been there, you say 20 years?
20 years.
Or take care of him.
We're
They'll
trying.
have it
Mhm.
often. They'll have a cranny you can't put in the duck truck.
All right, all in favor of the social worker 3 position request, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Eccles, the record reflect the board of
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 11B, letter of approval for the Smoky Mountain Relay. Mr. County Manager.
Thank you, sir. Sourwood Running LLC, if you'll recall, we approved a similar request last year. They host the Smoky Mountain Relay, which is a running event. Basically starts in Brevard and ends up at the Nantahala Outdoor Center. Part of that course comes through Macon County. In 2015, the state legislature changed
the permission granting process for these entities like Sourwood Running LLC. And as part of that, the state asked the Department of Transportation, asked for written acknowledgement and approval of the Smoky Mountain Relay by Macon County, as a portion of this race will come through our county. And also written acknowledgement and approval that the Smoky Mountain Relay, and in particular that portion of the same, which is to be situated in Macon County, is supported by the Macon County Board of Commissioners. So with that being said, the letter included in your agenda packet reflects the approval process needed by Sourwood Running LLC. Again, it is the same approval that we issued to this organization last year.
He's a team.
Are you
It's a team, they pass the baton, then they drive ahead. They drive 3 stations ahead, pass through 6 members, they pass, we watched them do it. I drove it. I got tired of it.
Can we get a motion to approve the letter?
Make a motion to approve.
Jay.
Presented, a motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Brian, we're close to that
Docket number
2022.
408.
Eric, what is your plan?
One more, I think, Tammy here.
Last leg. Come on up, we'll come up, public health, 3 grant requests. And then when we do that, we'll go over the sliding fee scale second.
Yes, thank you for allowing us to be added to the agenda. We have a couple items that Mr. Bruckner had actually consulted with Mr. Jones on, and he recommended that we go ahead and bring them to you guys at this time. I think that the information on the grants was sent out in one of your packets, but Mike graciously went and got copies for you guys and have provided that to you again. I don't want to read it word to word, word for word for you, because I think you guys have probably looked at that. But basically, what we have is we have 3 grants that the health department wants to apply for. And we took these to the Board of Health at our February 28th meeting, but we didn't have a quorum, so they could not approve those. So we're kind of bringing them to you out of order, because some of these grant applications are due before our next Board of Health meeting or before your next meeting. So we're bringing them to you with the caveat that if they're not approved at the March 28th Board of Health meeting, then we will hold on those that have not already passed the application deadline.
Is there any local dollars for the grants?
They are not. No matches for those. 2 of these actually involve behavioral health services, integrated care. So the Evergreen Foundation grant, I think you all are familiar with Evergreen Foundation, and our EMS services have actually got a grant from them. Mr. Bill is familiar with that foundation. We're applying for an integrated care grant with them to provide some behavioral health services within our primary care clinic as well as in our other clinics, as a pilot project that we hope can be mirrored into other western counties to provide some assistance there for those with lower end mental health issues that can, and substance abuse issues that can maybe be addressed and resolved within that one visit while they're in the clinic for other services. And we'll be screening those issues using some national screening tools through that SAMHSA has developed. The second one is a community health center grant through the Office of Rural Health. It is a similar grant, but it would allow us to add some additional staffing as well to provide services, and that's a 3-year grant if we were to receive that one. And then the third grant that we're applying for is through the Office of Women's Health, and it is for the prevention of opioid misuse in women throughout their lifespan. So based on other presentations tonight and issues within the community right now, these are timely grant opportunities for us to be able to apply for and hopefully get some grant dollars coming to the county to provide some services.
Tammy said you had to wait, it's just a shame you have to wait on any of these. Thank you. think we do well with any experience. We're also gonna, you know, at our next VIA meeting, we're gonna get that. You know, this is another example, Mr. Chairman, of the Macon County Health Department being front and center of a lot of things. A lot of this goes to, especially on the women's health issues. And the pregnancies, the unwanted pregnancies that's coming in, that has substance abuse problems. It's just a shame to have to wait till March 28th. I mean,
Well, some of these grants are going to be due before that. That's March 28th is when our
you're
next
gonna go ahead and apply?
Board of Health meeting. So we're going to go ahead and apply unless you guys ask us to stop.
I had
at this
suggested to
point,
Mr. Bruckner that since the Board of Health had not had an opportunity to act on these, that he seek approval of these 3 grant applications, subject to Board of Health approving them at such time as they're able to take those steps.
Motion to approve that.
Motion to approve, and second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
item
you
number
very
2, is that you?
I'll turn it over to Diane and let her explain that one.
Are you got them ready to go? Are they ready to go?
Thank you.
I'll be better next time. It's the same thing you guys done.
Last meeting now. With Jimmy. I just missed our last meeting, this was in Washington.
So you now qualify, right? Primary care services began over a year ago at the health department, and the goal was to help alleviate the unmet need of the adult residents of Macon County that have had a difficult time finding primary care. We are not equipped to provide extensive care for high-risk needs, such as patients with a lot of medical issues. Instead, we wanted to focus on patients 21 to 59, who generally only see a provider a couple times a year. Well, what we found over this past year plus, that we have seen 104 patients. 53 of them are males, 51 are females, 10 were Hispanic or Latino, 94 not Hispanic or Latino, and 9 were self-pay. 9, again, were self-pay. 20, I'm just reading this.
Oh, this ain't on the.
No, I'll get to that. 27 were Medicare, 18 were Medicaid, 32 had Blue Cross Blue Shield, and 18 of them had other insurance. Again, I go back to 9 were self-pay. When we first originated the program, we started with a 20% discount if you were income eligible. And of course, the insurance payments. So with that 20% discount, we found that there was a lot of people that could not even afford that. And that was the main reason that they did not participate in this primary care program that we started. So we would like to propose, and we did take this to the Board of Health, that we reduce that sliding fee scale down to a 60% discount or 40% sliding fee. And that's what you have in front of you. So before, if you look at that 249% of poverty, for a family of 1 to qualify for a discount, you had to make below $29,699. So, but then you only had a 20% discount, and that was creating a barrier for people to even afford the primary care service. So if you'll look at...
You're going to have to catch me up, I'm slow.
Okay.
Where you at?
Right here.
I'm 80%.
Yeah, if you look at the last, that one,
Okay.
you had to make below that.
Okay.
80% of the standard
No, they had to pay 80%.
80%.
They got a 20% discount.
This is 80% pay.
Right. So what we would like to propose is we drop that sliding fee scale down to 40%. And then you can see how that it would change some of the payments. Right underneath that are example of live patients that we had and how they qualified for the discount. So the first patient And that first code, that 99213, is just a regular office visit. So with the 20% discount, or 80% pay, they paid $96.80. With the new one, the proposed one, it's $48.40. So you can see that that's a little bit more affordable for the patients. And then the rest of the page is just examples. But one other thing that we did when we originally started the program was we referred the patients for lab services. So therefore, they fell under the lab program and not under primary care. So then they didn't qualify for that discount. So now we would also like to include those primary care patients in our lab services to offer them that discount based on the same sliding fee scale for them if they become a primary care provider.
How do you make up the difference? You go 80 to 40, the money, you don't worry about it, or how do you make that up?
Well, we have got a lot of good contracts, such as LabCorp. They give us a wonderful deal with lab services. Plus, with the numbers that I kind of read off before, we have a large base that are already insurance-based. So insurance companies reimburse you about 49% of what you bill. So we're basically saying that a private pay is going to pay you pretty close to what the insurance company would pay you.
I will say that the Board of Health voted unanimously in favor.
They do.
And the reduction in revenue is not gonna, it won't have to be subsidized out of the general fund.
It should not be. In fact, it should increase the number of participants, which would.
There was a lot of discussion going on here.
Is the goal here to have qualify more people, right, Diane? That's the
Correct.
goal.
See more
That's the goal here,
patients.
that. It's to see more people, it's to see a doctor.
That's
Well, we
exactly.
want to see those that don't have insurance. They, you know, that's what we started the service for, was for those that were underinsured.
Is there significantly more folks that can afford the 48 versus the 96? I mean, is that going to make a difference?
Yes, yes, it will. We use a application process to make sure that they don't have a lot of medical issues. So even if they qualify medically, some of them were just withdrawing their application when they found out how much that initial visit was going to be.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Four ayes, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Moving on to item 12, consent agenda. You got a chance to review it in your packet. There was one addition, budget amendment number 141, which was presented to us earlier tonight. I've just got a question. It's 139 and 140.
Those were internal amendments.
Okay.
All amendments don't come forward. There's some where we move between those line items.
Okay.
That's why they're skipping numbers.
It's easy enough. There's nothing that anybody would like to pull from the consent. Entertain a motion. Motion approved, a second.
Joanna.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or again.
It's closed.
Mike. We have some appointments. Takes me a minute to get there. First was Board of Equalization and Review, five seats. Derek, is it your mic? I'm working on it.
Those are Mr. Whiteman's recommendations, and it's basically the same five folks who have served on the board previous.
Dwight Benson, Bill Martin, Kevin Spivey, Gary Drake, Christine Blake.
I'll just say that children haven't previously served on this for several years. It takes experience and folks that discuss with the public and don't have a handle, and don't have a handle to know what's going on in the market. So I make a recommendation to approve these people. Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I apologize, can you remind me who made the motion second?
I made the motion.
She'll say.
Thank you.
All right, item B, the library board, we have 3 seats.
To the Macon, to the board of trustees. To the board of trustees, not to the board, but to the board of trustees.
Okay, so library board.
It is a board of trustees.
Okay, I'm with you now, Macon County Library Board of Trustees. Okay. We have Charles, I won't pronounce the last one, Dan and Chip, we'll go to the first names, I got those.
No.
Dennis
No,
Sanders.
okay, Charles has been serving, okay, I'm with you. So Dennis is replacing Charles. We're gonna do this individually or all three as one? Give me a motion.
I make a motion we approve Dennis Sanders, Sam Hochuli, and Frank Oliver to the Board of Trustees of Macon County Library.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Did you get those, Mike? Yes. Seeing as I'm not getting. I'm going through the actual letter there, make sure I get it right. And I think there's other ones coming up. I think there's one coming up potentially for the health board. Chester and I spoke about that earlier tonight for the eye doctor. Optometrist, okay. And then is there any others, planning board? We're all caught up with everything?
There's actually, a little on down the agenda, there's an entire list that Pam and I have put together.
Okay.
We can talk about that in a moment, we can talk about it now, whichever way you want to.
I've evidently had a different agenda than, so I'm sorry. Mapping review officer?
Mapping review officer, yes, that is in the mapping department. That's actually, that is not a board, that is a staff person. And you have to be, the board has to approve this person who works in the mapping office to sign off on maps, sign off on plats as they come in, review them in relationship to the calls on the deed. Mr. Mike Ramsey has been in this position for quite some time now. He transferred from maintenance and has actually been performing the duties of a review officer for quite some time. He filled a position that was vacated by Stephen Hummel, who was previously the review officer. So all we're doing now is making Mike Ramsey a review officer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Sorry, guys. I'm not seeing.
I believe it's all medical issue.
Yeah, but there's no follow-up. All right, list of upcoming appointments.
What we had endeavored to do is Pam had gone through her notebooks and appointment letters to attempt to determine exactly what appointments would be coming before you guys the rest of this calendar year. So I had two things in mind. One was to give you a heads up on what was upcoming. The second was to ask your permission or authorization to go ahead and to tidy the list up a little bit, post it on the county website so that the citizens can see what appointments are coming up. And then as we move through the year, and move through agendas, we'll take these in the month that they are upcoming. And once you folks make a decision, then we'll remove them from the website and just keep on going through the rest of the year. But that way, you know up front now what you're looking at for the rest of the year.
Do you notify the people who already on the boards that their term is up if they'd like to reapply?
Jeremy, Mr. Bill, that's done by whoever the staff person is that's serving that particular committee or board. We kind of try to work through staff on these to make sure.
It's like what Karen's going to think, like community fund employees. Karen's up, Ben's based, Bobby Cantino's up. I mean, did you know you was up, Karen?
I didn't.
So who would know that? I mean, they need to be notified somehow. I mean, for these, this is another board you need experience and, you know, that's what we've talked about before.
Okay.
Even though if they have limits on them, then that's another story. But if they're not limits, and some of them don't have limits.
And really, the planning board is just about the only one that has any kind of particular limits placed with the board.
Funding pool don't have limits, none of that. County School don't have limits, some of these others don't have limits. And we might have a lot of applicants for each position, we don't know, because you need to advertise, but some of these folks need to know that it's coming up. I don't know exactly which measures have to do that.
I think if you're gonna start putting them on the website, you just need to put, we just need to make it accessible and list all the board's members on there with their term expiration date. And they can access that information from the website as well.
Do they? I don't look at that. When you go to a lot of websites and they have, you know, that needs to go on the website somewhere. I mean, it's not paramount on our website.
Or we could send them a letter a year in advance or 6 months in advance of their appointment expiration.
Is that through their expiration, through their bylaws?
We'll get it handled.
We'll do it. And in, like in the funding pool, you got Jennifer Jones and Cindy Reed's coming up in June. So that's 5 members of that's the heart of that whole committee. So, I'm just saying, that's a really important committee to this board. Not that, although all of it's important, but
Again, this was.
that's a good idea, Mike. I'm glad you
Well, it's sort of
brought
a
it up.
different approach to getting this in front of you earlier so that the information is out there and that the 5 of you also know what's coming.
I believe Brett Murphy was just filling out the term. He's not been on the EDC just for a little while. He's just filling, he brought in to fill in the unexpired term. Yeah.
What about the planning board? I see Tommy Fox, he's already been there.
Tommy's there now.
Right.
I don't know what, how long.
That's an example of the list, I think.
Okay. He took Bill's way.
Yeah. I think he's sort of like Brett Murphy. He just sort of, I don't remember exactly, but I remember Brett Murphy. He's filling out that list.
So we're gonna, I mean, we're gonna post all this, try to online, who's on the boards, along with their expiration dates and what term they're in. And then secondly, I guess that I'll use the planning board, for example. I would think that Jack Morgan needs to be aware, or Tommy Jenkins for EDC,
Yes.
as long as those people are aware so that they can communicate with who's coming up. Yeah, I know it's difficult, it's like, but we got a lot of boards. We did try and trim those down on those.
We did try.
Okay. So,
But that's a good.
so the ones on here for March, will they be coming up at our April meeting?
Yes, sir. We maybe had to play a little bit of
Maybe
catch
March
up
and
here.
April, until we get caught up. Okay. Anything else for the board tonight? Chester, any for closed session? All right, gentlemen, if it's good with y'all, I know we have a lot of items, so we're going to try and bring up at our March 21st meeting. There's also a 6 p.m. meeting that several of us have been invited to at the Iowa School. I was going to see if you'd be okay for that at maybe 3 o'clock next Tuesday.
To meet here, to start our meeting.
So hopefully we can be done by 6, hopefully.
And the, is that?
Spain's not liking our request.
So we want to start a commission meeting for.
Well, I'm asking. Y'all, either that or we can just RSVP.
They can.
I don't land back in Atlanta.
Okay, well, let's just shoot for 6 and we'll just RSVP if we can't make it.
I see, what did you just say?
So we just start our meeting at 6.
Carl can't be here until 6 because he lands in Atlanta at 1. So we're gonna have to potentially miss that.
The Iowa
The
School.
Iowa School meeting later in the day.
You have
They
to
can-
recess
or they
on
can change it to a
Tuesday.
day.
Could you do it Monday or Wednesday? You have to
I
make
think
Tuesday.
Kim, I think you're out of town, aren't you? And Higdon, I think.
Wednesday or Thursday.
I'm up for either, but
I'm gone Thursday. Mental health meeting all day.
Tuesday. Is that okay, Gary?
Yes.
We just need to let them know. Okay.
They're not going to change their day.
But now, we've got 2, for that agenda, we got superintendent. That's for the, or, Dr. Thomas.
We may not need it.
No, we actually put them on the 11th. We actually moved them back to the 11th.
Okay.
I believe it shows back up.
Mike sent an email with it, but since
I
then,
had just listed a list of potential things.
since then, I've spoken to Dr. Baldwin and Dr. Thomas, and they're both planning on being here next.
Okay, that's what I.
So the 21st then, what's going to be on the agenda?
They're not here. Hold on one second, I'll tell you.
I've got it on my email
We
here.
got approved Parker Meadows bids.
We got Parker Meadows, we got Warren K,
Public
the
coming
fire
in.
department.
Warren K will be giving the fire department report. I have it right here, hold on. Just bear with me here.
We're going to deal with the issue concerning register deeds and sheriff's vacation.
Vacation and sick leave.
Yes, the vacation and sick leave of elected officials.
So it could be at 4 o'clock. You won't be here in that time at 4 o'clock.
Be real
Got this
tight.
traffic. Traffic.
I'm not.
This traffic.
You'll be 85 all the way.
I can't handle that.
Go get him, Adam.
But that's the worst time of day when we go through that.
Set the chocolate.
Why don't we shoot, if you want to shoot for 4:30, just, I don't know if we'll give an hour and a half, but we might.
Who else you got coming, read it, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to get it
The
over.
fire department,
That'll take 30 minutes.
That's 30
Warren's doing a fire, going to present a fire department report. We're going to be looking at the bids for the Robert C. Carpenter complex. We're going to
Sheriff, register deeds.
Vacation and sick leave.
What are those bids actually going to be
Approval of
received?
elected officials. Front, we're going to have a representative from Frontier come, give us an update.
So I'm now happy.
Be a long meeting.
Yeah.
You'll do it on the other day. You'll do it.
Gosh,
The carpenter bill, of course, that's important.
that's
Get
important.
moving. And I think they do it.
The other things, well, I mean, yeah, the other things can wait.
well, don't you really need the, on your budget part, don't you need the fire department stuff? I mean, that it.
You know, more, I mean, yeah, I think we should probably give that in the Robert C. Carpenter. Would be the only things that are pressing.
Should be able to do that in an hour.
We should be able to do that in an hour and a half. And if we recess the meeting, we can add and take off whatever we want to off the agenda when we get there, as long as it's not a special call meeting.
Okay, so we're going to recess till 4:30.
4:30 on the 21st.
21st. And Derek, you can work on paring that down. The essential and the non-essential items.
April 11th is when Dr. Baldwin and Dr. Thomas.
Next Tuesday.
This conversation, I didn't want to today.
Just, if anybody wants to go with me on Burke County on Thursday, April 6th.
Did you land on time?
That's the district meeting more.
Are you gonna have to go for tree flooding?
Whatever it can.
Southwest.
6th. We'll get back late, but we'll, and then on the 8th, y'all are all buying tickets for the barbecue. We just show up front, you gotta buy tickets.
So, next Tuesday for you?
Not during the day. I write a newspaper on
4:30, okay?
Tuesday. 4:30 is fine.
Okay. That's better than 3?
Yes.
We got a baby.
Where is he? Was here earlier?
Anyway, Sheriff fed him soda and a sandwich.
Okay.
Best babysitter.
Motion to recess.
No, we're going to, not to adjourn.
Oh, yeah.
Today, same location.
That'll take that.
Got it. Motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor?
Who are you going to?
All righty, I'll try to have the video up sometime tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
We got 4